What happens when teacher tries to humiliate him? Genius boy solves the hardest math problem in seconds. Let's dive to see what happens when a teacher underestimates a student's potential and tries to humiliate him. In moments like these, we often witness the power of resilience, intelligence, and courage. It is not just about solving an equation, but proving oneself against all odds. Let us explore how one young man turned a moment of shame into triumph. There was a boy named Leo Grayson, who lived in the small town of Ridgewood. He wasn't tall or muscular. He didn't stand out in sports or social gatherings. His presence was almost invisible among his peers. But there was something extraordinary about Leo that only a few people noticed. He had a mind like no other. Leo loved numbers. To him, math wasn't just a subject. It was a language, a way to understand the world around him. While others found equations intimidating, Leo saw beauty in them. They were puzzles waiting to be solved, mysteries yearning for answers. Every number, every symbol held meaning to him, and he could unravel their secrets effortlessly. But none of this mattered at Ridgewood High School. At school, Leo blended into the background. Teachers rarely called on him because they assumed he wouldn't contribute much. Classmates teased him for being quiet and reserved. Even his own father once said, "Why don't you try talking more? Maybe then people will notice you." Leo shrugged off those comments. He knew deep down that words weren't his strength. Numbers were. And so he kept to himself, spending hours after school poring over books and working through problems that most adults would find challenging. One day, everything changed. It started as any ordinary Tuesday morning. Leo walked into Mr. Thompson's advanced algebra class, taking his usual seat near the back. Mr. Thompson was known for being strict and unyielding. He believed in pushing students to their limits, even if it meant embarrassing some along the way. Today, Mr. Thompson decided to test the class with a problem he described as the hardest math question anyone here will ever face. He wrote it on the board, filling up half the space with symbols and variables. The room fell silent as everyone stared at the daunting equation. "This," Mr. Thompson declared loudly, pacing across the front of the classroom, "is why many of you won't make it far in life. You lack the skills, the determination, and most importantly, the brain power." The students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one dared to raise their hand. After several minutes of tense silence, Mr. Thompson stopped walking and fixed his gaze on Leo. "Grayson," he called out sharply, "you've been sitting quietly since the first day of school. Do you even know what this means?" Leo looked up, surprised. He hadn't expected to be singled out. Slowly, he stood up, his heart racing. All eyes were on him now. "Come to the board," Mr. Thompson ordered. "Show us what you've got, or prove that you're wasting your time here." Leo hesitated for a second before stepping forward. As he approached the board, whispers filled the room. Some students smirked, expecting him to fail spectacularly. Others felt sorry for him, knowing how cruel Mr. Thompson could be. But Leo didn't feel fear. Instead, he felt calm. This was his element. These numbers, these symbols, they spoke to him. And he was ready to listen. As Leo picked up the chalk, Mr. Thompson crossed his arms and leaned against the desk. "Take your time," he said mockingly. "We have all day." Leo ignored the sarcasm. He began writing, carefully breaking down the equation step by step. Each movement of his hand seemed deliberate, precise. The classroom grew quieter as students watched in awe. Even Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued despite himself. Within minutes, Leo reached the final solution. He turned around, holding the chalk midair, and met Mr. Thompson's skeptical stare. "Is that correct?" Mr. Thompson asked slowly, his voice betraying a hint of disbelief. "Yes," Leo replied softly but firmly. Mr. Thompson grabbed a calculator from his desk and began verifying the answer. For a long moment, the room remained still, the air thick with anticipation. Then, finally, Mr. Thompson nodded. "Well done," he admitted grudgingly. "I didn't think anyone in this class could solve it." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Some students clapped hesitantly, while others exchanged stunned glances. For the first time, Leo felt seen, not as the quiet kid in the corner, but as someone capable of greatness. But the story doesn't end here. Because sometimes, success brings challenges of its own. Word of Leo's achievement spread quickly throughout the school. Teachers praised him, classmates sought his help, and even Mr. Thompson treated him with newfound respect. Life seemed brighter than ever. Yet, beneath the surface, trouble brewed. One afternoon, as Leo worked on homework in the library, another teacher approached him. Her name was Mrs. Harper, and she taught physics. She smiled warmly, and handed him a piece of paper. "I heard about your talent," she said. "Would you mind helping me solve this problem? It's been bothering me for weeks." Leo glanced at the paper and froze. The problem wasn't just difficult, it was impossible. Or so he thought. After staring at it for hours, he realized that the solution required knowledge beyond high school curriculum. It demanded expertise in advanced calculus, a subject he hadn't yet studied. Frustrated and defeated, Leo returned the paper to Mrs. Harper the next day. "I couldn't figure it out," he admitted, his voice tinged with disappointment. Mrs. Harper frowned. "Are you sure? I thought you were unstoppable." Her words stung. For the first time, Leo doubted himself. Was he really as smart as everyone claimed? Or had he simply gotten lucky? Over the following days, Leo withdrew into himself. He stopped participating in class discussions and avoided conversations with friends. The pressure to live up to expectations weighed heavily on him. It wasn't until a chance encounter with an old mentor that Leo found clarity. During lunch break, he wandered into the science lab, seeking solace amidst the familiar sights of beakers and microscopes. There, he met Mr. Langston, a retired professor who occasionally volunteered at the school. After listening to Leo's struggles, Mr. Langston placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Failure isn't the opposite of success," he said gently. "It's part of it. Every great mind has faced obstacles. What matters is how you respond." Leo mulled over these words long after leaving the lab. That night, armed with renewed determination, he dove back into studying. He borrowed advanced textbooks from the library, watched online tutorials, and practiced tirelessly. Slowly but surely, he mastered the concepts needed to tackle Mrs. Harper's problem. Weeks later, when Mrs. Harper revisited the topic in class, Leo raised his hand confidently. When called upon, he explained the solution step by step, earning applause from both students and teachers alike. This time, though, Leo felt different. Not proud, not arrogant, but content. He understood that true intelligence wasn't about never failing. It was about learning from failure and growing stronger. Years passed, and Leo graduated from Ridgewood High School. He went on to study mathematics at a prestigious university, eventually becoming a renowned mathematician. Along the way, he encountered countless challenges, each one teaching him valuable lessons. Looking back, Leo often remembered that fateful Tuesday morning in Mr. Thompson's class. It wasn't just the day he proved himself, it was the day he discovered his purpose. Numbers became his passion, his calling, and his legacy. And whenever someone asked him about his journey, he always shared the same quote: "Success isn't given, it's earned. One step at a time, one problem at a time." For Leo Grayson, every equation told a story, and his story was one worth remembering. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.